Welcome back to the show. Now we're getting into our Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse review, and we're joined by another guest, Alex Hampton. He's been on the show for past times. Head of Momentum Media, does really great work in analyzing different Marvel movies and just DC movies in general. Thank you so much for being on, man.
Thank you for having me, Well. It's good to be on the show again.
Yeah, man, absolutely. And to start with the overview, this is the sequel to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. It is set in a shared multiverse of alternate universes called the Spider-Verse. The film is directed by Joaquim Dos Santos, Kemp Powers, and Justin K. Thompson, starring Shameik Moore, Hailee Steinfeld, Brian Tyree Henry, Luna Lauren Velez, and Jake Johnson. In this film, Miles goes on an adventure with Gwen Stacy, Spider-Woman, across the multiverse, where he meets a new team of Spider people known as the Spider Society, led by Miguel O'Hara, Spider-Man 2099, but comes into conflict with them over handling a new threat. Had a budget of 100 million and brought in 247.8 million to the box office at a 96% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. To start off, Alex, like, what were your initial thoughts on a film that was, really spectacular visually and had thrills from the start to the ending cliffhanger?
Um, when I walked into the film, I had really high expectations because I really enjoyed the previous film. Um, just that opening scene where Gwen's telling her story immediately got me like sucked into the world. And seeing that same dynamic where Spider-Man has that so-so, well, every Spider-Man has that so-so relationship with the cops, but with Gwen, her father, um, has that dynamic where he hates Spider-Woman and is hunting Spider-Woman, but even when he finds out that Spider, can we do spoilers?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, spoiler
Yeah, when we
spoiler warning. I gotta preface this spoiler warning again.
uh, when he finds out that his daughter is Spider-Woman, like he still tries to arrest her, which is crazy because it's just like, yo, that's your daughter, like, and I get you have a job to do, but like,
That's still your
that's
daughter.
that's your daughter,
Yeah,
like, and she's tried to tell you multiple times, like, this is not what you think it is. So to see that relationship dynamic within that first 20 to 30 minutes was really cool. And then seeing the vast different Spider-Man, from all the different Spider-Man that you've either played a game of or watched a show of or seen different suits of him. I mean, I didn't even know there was a Spider-Man dinosaur. Like, how did he get
I
his
did not know
powers? Like,
that.
that was
That was news to
crazy.
me.
you know. So just to see that world, and then also to see how Miles Morales, like, well, I'll say before I get into Miles Morales, what I really enjoyed about Miguel's character is that Miguel is very aware that there's different Spider-Men across this Spider-Verse, and he has a job to do to protect the multiverse, which I appreciate. What I didn't like is that he kept referring to Miles as a mistake.
Mm,
Um because he said that, obviously the spider that bit him came from another universe, which I understand, but I can make the argument that if Peter didn't end up at that science fair, he wouldn't have gotten his spider powers either. Like, if you would have moved certain pieces around, I mean it kind of proves my point in the beginning of the movie where that version of Peter Parker became the Lizard when he should have been Spider-Man. So but anyway, but overall, it was great storytelling. The art in this movie was freaking amazing.
crazy.
Definitely took a page off of the first movie. It was like we were watching a live comic book in the theater, like
That's what
literally
it felt
from.
like. It really felt like you were in this like different 3D experience. It wasn't even 3D. You were just like in a real live setting. Yeah,
Right, right. And I seen it in IMAX, and I was just like blown away because it was just like every frame was a color palette of the characters, the different city, the different Spider-Mans that were introduced. Spider Punk is my dude. Like, that guy. Yeah.
shout
That
out to Spider
guy.
Punk.
Yeah, he was. I mean, I've read about him. He doesn't have that much of a back history, but the way Daniel Kaluuya played that character, I was like, whoa! Like, I was just blown away. He was one of the standouts, and then also the Indian Spider Man, how he was just so chill about being Spider Man and chill about just his whole life was really cool, and he was so charismatic. I thought he was really cool too. And then seeing that relationship dynamic between Gwen and Miles was amazing. And then seeing Miles grow up, like
Yeah,
he's balancing school and responsibilities while being Spider-Man, and he can't tell his parents because he's afraid his parents are going to judge him. So just to see those crazy dynamics and then to see that crazy cliffhanger at the end, which I was not expecting.
Yeah.
Like that was the one thing I can honestly say I was not expecting out of everything that I've seen. That was just like, whoa. Like that was crazy. But overall, my initial thoughts, this is probably the best Spider-Man movie we got.
To you, Kevin, what were your initial thoughts on this film? Because we've mentioned like it, you've seen it twice. It's visually just so dynamic; it really pops out to you. What were your initial takeaways of it? And like Alex just said, a big statement. This is the best one we've got. Like what are your takeaways on just like the high praise it's instantly getting?
Yeah, no, I loved it. I loved it. Like I said, I watched it Thursday at 2 p.m. when it came out. It was the first showing I could see here. And then the next day, me and my wife went to go watch it. Really enjoyed the movie, and had super high expectations. Into the Spider Verse is one of my favorite movies ever. And so, hearing that it was rated so well and people had a lot of stuff, usually I get too hyped for a movie and then I wind up being a little let down,
You were
even if I like
disappointed.
it a lot. This was, I was not at all let down. I Yeah, the whole discussion on how the artwork was like, if you go look at the Spider Gwen comics, I mean, it's kind of, it uses more of the watercolor kind of look whenever
Yeah,
they did the ink and the coloring for it and everything. And so, I mean, just like the scenes with her and her dad, and you just see the, like, it's literally dripping as if it was painted. Like there's, the walls are colored and dripping, and there's different styles for each world, because that's how comics work. Whenever there's one writer for one world, you don't have the same, person who does the pencils, person who does the inks, person who does the coloring. There's different styles of art for each one, and the fact that and the way you can show that is insane. Like it was just incredible. Visually, is one of the best things I've ever seen. I mean, I think that's an easy thing to say. And so I don't have it over the other one, over the first Spider-Man for me, or Into the Spider-Verse. The only small thing is just kind of, in and of itself, it definitely feels like a part one. That it's a
Yeah.
little bit different than, there's been comparisons with Infinity War, but Infinity War, I mean, it
Mm.
was a movie. Well, I'm saying like the whole part one and part two,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah,
I
yeah.
was
there was
I
an
was thinking
ending.
that because the part grading a part one is very tough.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
and so the Infinity War, I was like, but it's kind of a beginning, a middle, and then there was an end in a sense. I mean, they were dusted, and it lasted for five. I mean, that's a whole thing that happened, and then it kind of kept going, in a way. But so there was a lot of things going on. I really like looking at it through, one of my friends named Bradford. I don't know if you know Bradford Davis. He's a writer, and he said something that I thought was really good too about,
Mm.
this movie and it being a critique kind of on fandom, or certain kinds of fandom, because you see, my or not Miles, Miguel, whenever he's saying the thing like you were saying earlier, the whole "you're not supposed to be here, you're not supposed to be here," and how people do critique the other versions of superheroes when they're not, from a particular community,
Yeah,
let's say.
let's put it lightly.
And so when you have like a black Spider-Man or a woman Spider-Man or an Indian Spider-Man, or from multiple different communities, or a Mexican one like Miguel, like different communities that have Spider-Man or Spider People, or and Thor, or in all these different shows, and how it's like it's supposed to be like this. I mean, to the point where it's like this is a canon moment, because that's what people
Yeah,
always say. Well, it's this is what the comics did, this is what the comics. And look, I'm as super nerdy about comics. I got books everywhere. I'm starting to write comics. I'm like nerdy into this stuff. Like I get it to a degree, but like the fact that like you see that whenever they say it's kind of a critique there, you can see that through the whole story. Then that kind of aggressive, you're not supposed to be here, kind of existing in those spaces in which you're not really, expected, in a sense, from certain people.
yeah, absolutely. And now getting into our first topic from 1 to 4 stars, what would you give it? I would definitely give this four. I mean, it completely took the story and the action to the next level, and the character development was really at a peak level. To you, Alex, what would be your rating from 1 to 4 stars, and some of your particular reasons?
It would definitely be 4 stars. No
Maybe
questions
even
about
five.
it.
Maybe even five.
Like Oh wait, hold on for a quick second. Hold on, I'm sorry. I have a phone call.
Kevin, to you from 1 to 4 stars, what would be your particular rating and some of your reasons?
I'm gonna give it a 3.98.
All right,
Like it's right
right there.
under. Yeah, Into the Spider Verse is a 4 for me, which is like a high perfect. The 3.98 is like the small thing I said of it being like it couldn't be really its own thing fully because there's something else and it hasn't finished what's going on.
How much? How
And then
much
there
does that
was
hinder? How much does that hinder though? Like, do you think that's when it is leading into something else? You do think it can't be judged as its like own movie, and it's not own movie because obviously it is its own movie, but it's almost like it's leading into something else, so that next thing might even be superior than what it is.
possibly like for me, I'd almost like let's say the next one winds up being just as good or whatever. I'm probably mentally going to be just judging these together. And I might wind up being like, hey, they're together. It's a 5 out of 4.
Mhm.
It's just kind of a little hard for me. Like if you were to show somebody to watch it, like in my theater on the second watch, a whole bunch of kids were upset because of the way it ended on a cliffhanger, and some
Yeah,
parents because it was a cliffhanger. I knew that it was since it was like in a sense a part one and another one's coming out soon. I knew there was some way it was probably going to end in which you were going to need to keep watching or something. Um,
the
I
reaction
didn't
to
think it
that
would
was
be like
interesting because
that.
even in my
But
movie, somebody saw it was like, "Oh, that was horrible." Like, come on, why would you end it like that? Like, people, they just, I'm like, you just watched a spectacular movie, but that ending
yeah,
just completely warps how you view
yeah.
it.
And I'm not taking it at all. I think it's great how it is. It's not like a bad choice, nothing at all like that. I'm not saying it was bad. Like, again, it surprised me the way they did it. I thought it was good. I think it's really good. It's just more so like if you showed somebody the movie by itself, it wouldn't maybe be full. But that's being super picky. And I'm only being picky compared to like the first one, which I think is perfect. So
Yeah.
that's the only reason I'm even being. And I'm saying that as someone, I'm probably gonna watch it 3 more times in theater. So I think it's incredible,
It,
amazing.
it, it
So,
absolutely is. To you, Alex, why would you rate it kind of as a 4 star movie?
Okay, sorry about that, you guys. But okay, so the reason why I would rate it 4 stars, and the reason why I say this is probably the best Spider-Man movie ever for me. Um, this was a movie that had a really good beginning, middle, and end. And when this was a movie obviously filled with cameos, but the cameos actually made sense. There's a reason why you saw all the different like prowlers and the different Spider-Man. They were all there to contribute to the main story, which one of my favorite things about this movie is that they could have taken this movie and just made this movie like a cameo movie, and it would have been so whack to the point where you saw every
It would have been
Spider-Man you
generic.
remember watching as a kid, and it's like there's no story. It's just like, oh, you run into, you know 1999 Spider-Man. So what? But like to see like some of the Spider-Man that you watch as a kid or even as a young adult have lines in this. Even the video game Spider-Man had a line in the movie, and I was just
Yeah.
like, "Whoa!" Like he was there. And then, if you're paying attention, when I saw it the second time, Genki is actually playing Marvel Spider-Man 2 in his bedroom. Like
yeah,
you were watching him
yeah.
play the game, and then you actually see the actual Spider-Man in the Spider-Verse. So I thought there were a lot of funny moments, and then also to see Donald Glover as the
Glover,
Prowler. Oh my
Yeah.
god, like that's. I mean, if we don't get a live action Miles Morales movie, I don't know when. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how we're gonna get one, but if we don't get one soon, I know that like the fandom probably is gonna rupture. But for me, like I said, it told a complete
is that confirmed?
story,
Is that
and
confirmed that we're getting a live action Miles Morales?
Oh, there has to
it's
be.
it,
Yeah,
it's
I would
it's
think so.
it's not confirmed, but it's hard for me to believe that we're not gonna get one.
Yeah.
Only because like if Donald Glover, the question is Donald Glover's Prowler in the MCU or not? If it's not, I'm okay with that. If it is, I'm okay with that. Either way, we're that's the question. It's just a variant of the Sony verse or a variant of the MCU. And what I loved about this movie is that this movie is very aware that the MCU exists, that the Tobey Maguire universe
Mhm.
exists, that Andrew Garfield universe exists. It's very aware of the fact that it's this movie, it's in its own universe, and it doesn't necessarily need those other universes to make this movie better. And that's what I loved about this movie. You brought up Infinity War. I've seen that comparison, and I agree because it does set up like a part one, part two. But I think personally, Infinity War had a definitive ending. Yeah, everyone
Mhm.
got dusted, but let's just say if that was the end of the MCU, like at least phase one of the MCU, I would have been okay with that.
True,
I would have
true.
been okay with it because like because here's the thing, there was no, even in the beginning of Endgame, remember when they went to go approach Thanos, he destroyed the stones.
Mhm.
So at that point, that was literally the definitive ending to that story until they decided to do time travel, which is, a cop out for almost every movie in a
Yeah.
sense. My thing is with Spider-Verse, they didn't have to use a supernatural element in a sense to leave us off of a cliffhanger. No, they put Miles in a different universe, and he has to face himself. He has to now deal with another version of himself, and supposedly he may get back up or not. And the reason why this cliffhanger meant so much is because, yeah, you're gonna have to watch Beyond the Spider Verse to get the completion, but it left you wondering, okay, is Miles going to die, or which Miles is going to die? How is he going to grow from this point?
Yeah.
What is the Spider Verse going to end up being? One criticism I do have, when you see the Spot hopping into different universes, what I did not like is when he hopped into the Venom verse and he started talking to that lady. It was a funny scene, but I don't know if anyone caught it. The Spot is still in cartoon form.
Mm.
And I'm thinking like, why would he still be in cartoon form if he's in the real world? I would think that they would show like a real live version of the Spot if he's jumping into someone else's universe. Only
Mhm.
reason why I say that is because if you watch them, and again, I watched it twice. When you watch the video game Spider-Man, the PS4 Spider-Man, you see him in his video game form, but when he's in the Spider-Verse, he's in that cartoon comic book form. So it's like they didn't really stay true to, the only person who really stayed true to who they was Donald Glover. So he was a human in and out of the Spider Verse. But everybody else, like even Spectacular Spider Man, he had that one scene where he's a fully cartoon character, and then when they're chasing Miles, that is when you see frames of him in that little comic book vibe version of him, which I think they could have did a little bit of a better job of, okay, if you're gonna have Spot hop from these different universes, change his appearance. Because like even when he went to the Lego verse, he was still himself.
Mhm.
So but for me, this had a complete story, beginning, middle, and end. We saw Miles's growth. And honestly, uh what I loved about Miles is that he's the only Spider-Man who said, "I'm not going to let you guys tell my
Tell my
story."
story. Yeah, that was powerful.
And I think that was the one of the most definitive things that made him the standout out of every single Spider-Man within that pool, because they all have the same origin story to an extent.
Mhm. Yeah,
So,
definitely. And now getting into favorite character, one that really stood out to me is how they developed Gwen, because she's arguably the secret protagonist of the film, and her reconciling with her father, setting out to help Miles, change his destiny, really sent her character in a stellar new direction. To you, Kevin, who was your overall favorite character in this movie, and just how they were developed?
So I'm gonna not say Gwen and Miles. I mean, they're great, and they're probably the best too.
Yeah.
And I love that. I just want to say the one that like kind of stood out for me that I love that I didn't think wasn't expecting and all that, and that was Hobie Spider Punk. Like you already brought that up a little earlier, but like man, as like a borderline political anarchist myself, I was
mhm.
like, man, this dude, he
That's my guy.
literally was in there, was just chill and cool the whole time, was doing this, was like, yeah, and it's just kind of different than you hear from various superheroes. Even the way when he went into this whole thing that he views as an institution and a thing, he was just like, he still has that side eye. He's like, y'all have this whole thing here, but like, what's kind of going on? And then when he sees it, and I remember sitting there watching. I was like, he's about to tell him to put his whole hand on there again, like he did earlier. Watch, I bet. And he did that thing, and then he goes and grabs it and says, "I'm out." And one thing I didn't notice until the second time, I don't know why I didn't catch it the first time, probably because so much was going on. But do you remember whenever he asked Miles, he was like, "Why don't you just go and make your own?" Because he said, "Why do you want to be here?" And Miles was like, "I just want to get a watch." Like he said something like that.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Why don't you make your own?" So when he left after they were like trying to get Miles in there, he threw his watch off, right?
Yeah.
But then whenever he gives the one to Gwen, he made one. Like, and the portal looks different. It's in Hobie's animation. Like
Yeah.
whenever she goes into the portal, it's not the same portal that they're going through. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, because he mentioned earlier, why don't you just make your own? And so then he made his own and then just brought it to her and then left. And then whenever she goes through it, you see that weird kind of like, I have no idea how to describe that animation. His appearance, even like, it kind of almost strained my eyes in a weird way because it wasn't mixing with the others at times. Like my
Yeah.
eye had to like adjust. But yeah, so I really, really enjoyed his character. A very different type of person in there. That was,
Stood
yeah,
out. He
even
stood out.
yeah,
Definitely
just
stood out.
total different situation. Yeah, so
Yeah,
I really like Kobe.
absolutely. Alex, to you, who was your overall favorite character in this one?
I have to agree with Kevin. Spider Punk.
Roland Super
Spy,
too.
I mean, Spider Punk. And I will say this. I won't spend too long on this. Um, what he looks like in the movies is not what he looks like in the comic books. And I think the way the directors took the liberty to make him look more like Daniel Kaluuya in a sense, but like more like a um Bob Marley
Bob
fused with
Marley,
Daniel
yes, nice.
Kaluuya. I was like, yo, if they start making comics with him looking like that, I'm buying them. I
Yeah,
am
Yeah,
buying. But the true personality of Spider Punk is how I kind of read him because he is an anarchist. He you know, Spider Punk, like if you read his comics, he normally does he fights crime, but he fights like institutions in a sense, like by using his power. So I thought that having him in this movie was amazing. So yeah, Spider Punk was a standout for me.
definitely. And now getting into most memorable scenes, I had the opening fight scene, also touring the Spider Society base, the Spider War, Gwen coming into her own, and then finally the double twist ending. To you, Alex, were there any particular scenes that kind of stood out to you as like maybe like the most dynamic ones?
Where Miles finally breaks down and tells his mom that he's Spider-Man. But here's the thing though, it's funny, and I noticed this the first time. I knew Miles was not in his world when he got home because his mom reacted to him when she first sees Miles in his room.
Yeah,
I was going to assume she'd be upset because he had been gone all
that's what I
day,
was thinking too. I was like, she's gonna be super upset about
but
this.
she was super chill.
Yeah,
So when he said I'm Spider-Man and she was like, "Who's that?" I I was the only one in the theater who wasn't surprised when she said that. Everybody else was like, "Why would she?" Like, no, like because I pay attention to little stuff, and then I kept saying, "Well, where's his dad?" Is his like his dad wasn't supposed to die until 2 days later from that point. 2 days hadn't passed yet. So where's his father? So I knew he was in the universe. I thought what was going to happen was his mom was going to try to kill Miles. But then when we see Aaron walk in, I was like, oh, this is I don't know what's about to happen here.
yeah, me either. I was
And
like,
then
what's gonna happen?
once it leads up to the final scene, I think
Mhm.
one of the standout scenes of the whole movie, which makes the movie really great. Miles Morales is fighting himself as the Prowler, which is crazy. And then another criticism now that I think about it, there are other variants of Miles as Spider-Man as well. So for them to kind of exclude those other variants of Miles being Spider-Man, like okay, you know, Miles Morales has his own game. That's a version of Spider-Man that could have been included in the movie. But they included the other version of Spider-Man, the PS4 version Spider-Man, instead of the Miles Morales. And I get it. They're trying to set up that Miles was really the only one who became Spider-Man, but uh other than that, just to see, my favorite scene is when he finally breaks down and tells his mom who he is. I really enjoyed that scene because he was like, I have the weight of the world on my shoulders and I'm just a kid. I need help. I can't do this.
Yeah.
I
I,
can't. So, but
man,
yeah, go
one
ahead.
thing I wanted to say on that scene with the Prowler, there's one other thing that took it down 0.1% for me. One thing I didn't like was like when you see Miles as the good Miles, right? As how we view it. Why does he talk this particular way and look this particular way? But when he's the Prowler, he has braids and he's Miles Morales. Like they make him more like as if braids and having an accent now is going to be like you being the
Yeah,
bad guy. That
I
was
think
one
that
little
was
he,
part of me.
interesting.
I think he was fully embodied. Like, because if you watch, like, Miles as a character leans, and I hate saying this but I kind of see it this way. Miles leans more black than he does Hispanic. Like,
Hmm.
he only speaks Spanish with his mom, and then with certain
Yeah,
characters who don't speak English. And I think with this variant of him is leaning more Spanish
sure.
than black.
Oh, and that would make sense too, partly with his dad dying in a sense. He'd probably
Right,
be,
right.
but no, I'm talking about even on the black end and of being like, oh, he has braids now, so that's going to be more like of a menacing look, is what I mean. Is how people
Right.
Oh,
would view
How they
sometimes
portrayed
how
him.
characters look. You know what I mean?
mm, mm.
Like, and there's a small theory I got where I'm like, well, what if he's not? I mean, we didn't see him fully like attack him, so we don't know that he's like fully a bad evil prowler. I mean, they're doing the same thing as if you saw another version of yourself. They captured him and then he got there and he's standing there with him. But what if it winds up going like he's the prowler, but a version that's like, I don't know, with a conscience or something to some degree that he's doing something. I don't know.
I,
But
I see where you're going with that, but the reason why I would only disagree, when you see that Miles's dad is dead, I think that version of Miles or his uncle or both of them killed his father, because like, for instance, his
oh,
uncle's way too comfortable with Miles's mom, like they're in a relationship. So it wouldn't surprise me if Miles was the one who killed his dad or his uncle killed his dad. I and plus, remember, this is the world where that spider came from, because this is a world without Spider-Man.
Mhm.
mhm.
So
Yeah,
that's where that spider
everybody
came
for
from to
themselves.
bite Miles. So since that didn't happen, I'm going to assume this Miles, I mean, obviously he fell into some form of a bad influence and his dad's not there, but they don't explain how. And remember when Miles tells Miles, I have to save our dad, he's like, he's not my dad, he's your dad. My
Mhm.
thing is that if my dad died, and if my dad truly died and I would feel some form of remorse of it. And to see another version of me trying to save my dad and I don't feel anything, that didn't
Highly
sit well
suspicious.
with me. That's why I'm like, maybe he's responsible for his own dad's death.
It is still weird though. He's seeing another version of himself that he doesn't even know if it's like really him too. I mean, you got to think like he's literally seeing another dude dressed up, and that's him. That he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna just tie you up because I don't know if you're like what this is either." You know what I
But
mean?
he was really calm though. He was like,
Oh,
he had a blank face and everything. I was like,
I
whoa.
agree.
Yeah.
I agree. That's why I said it's not even like a. I don't have it as like a take. I just have a small
Mm.
like I wonder if they'll kind of do that a little bit, like if there'll be some version of that, and to where because I do think eventually it's not like they're going to kill this Miles. I think there's going to be some version of I don't know he becomes that or someone comes in to help and you know all that. But like yeah, that's a small theory, like not a big theory. I'm gonna kind of watch it again and see like is there anything else in there that might have
Yeah.
you know there's so much
Could
in there though.
have been hinting towards that.
Yeah.
To you, Kevin, what were like some of your memorable scenes overall for this one?
Um, I kind of mentioned one earlier. It's not a particular scene, but just the method they did with each with distinct styles for each world. Whether it was Pav in Mumbatan, is that how you pronounce it in India,
I think so.
um, with the Indian Spider-Man, or Gwen's world in which it was painted a certain way, or that Picasso vulture that came in, like off of sketches from notebooks, or Hubie's look, or Even the way that Spot winds up looking at the end, a lot of people have commented how he looks kind of like how sketches and unfinished, uh, unpainted artwork looks like whenever comics get done, like how it's not quite finished. It kind of reminded me, I've read certain like horror comics. It kind of almost had a horror comic lens, like
Mm.
how it looked a little more evil and how it progressed from being goofy to that way. I just loved all the different ways they did that. And one of them that I like too, I love intros. Like I
Oh
love a good
yes.
like someone busts into the scene. So whenever they were fighting Vulture, and then 2099 comes flying in, Miguel comes flying in, and then is it Jesse Drew, right? Jessica
Yeah.
Drew.
Yeah. Jessica Drew.
And then when she comes in on the motorcycle, the way that they get introduced, I'm like, oh man, I love an intro scene where someone just comes in like
I'm
looking
in.
9 months
cool, hair
pregnant.
is up, she's painting,
Yeah.
she's on a motorcycle. Like
Yeah.
I love a good intro. So those intros, the ways they jumped in, I was like, it like got me hyped just seeing it. I was like, oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
I love. So every intro they did through it was pretty great, but that one was like particularly good for me.
Oh yeah, definitely. And now getting to our next topic with most memorable quotes I had. Let's do things differently this time, so differently from Gwen. Also, the power of the multiverse in the palm of my hand from the Spot. Wherever you go from here, from Rhea Morales. Also, Miles being Spider-Man's sacrifice. That's the job from Miguel O'Hara. One thing I've learned from Miles, all possible from Gwen. Also, sorry, I'm doing my own thing from Miles. And then finally, I never found the right band, so I started my own from Gwen. To you, Alex, what were the standout quotes for you in this one?
The best one. Sorry, I'm gonna do my own thing.
We
I
gotta
was
go with that.
like, I'm not the. It reminded Miles the one, and this is the reason why I really love this movie. They tried to make Miles feel out of place, like he
So
was
many
not
times.
fit to be
Mhm.
Spider-Man. And I would say that's a little bit racist if it wasn't the fact that it was more than just one race there, but given the fact that they were black, white, Hispanic, LGBT, animals, I mean, everyone was represented literally in this movie.
I mean, it still
So
could be a little bit though.
That's what I was
it
saying.
still
Like
could
there
be,
could be some
It
hints
just
of
felt
that
like
it
it.
though.
still could
Like,
be, had there not been some black people. I mean, Spider
Yeah.
Woman. I mean, Issa Rae's characters,
Yeah.
black. The virtual Spider Man, black. She was a woman. So for me, for him to say that, it's like, listen, all of you guys can accept your fate. That's fine. I'm not going to allow this fate to
to
be a
be boxed in.
representation of me. But also, and another again, which this film kind of somewhat contradicts itself. What was the fate that made Tom Holland Spider-Man Spider-Man? People keep saying Aunt May. Aunt May died when he was already Spider-Man. So that doesn't make sense to me. So Aunt May died literally. So, but also, I also understand that in No Way Home, spoilers if you haven't seen No Way Home, Tom Holland Spider-Man is transitioning into another version of himself, where he's not relying on Tony Stark anymore for help. He's his own man now, and no one knows who Peter Parker is, but they know who Spider-Man is. But that's, to me, that still doesn't give him the definitive factor of what made him Spider-Man, because he was already Spider-Man way before that happened. So
Yeah.
the fact that Miles has to allow this to happen, well, what happened into Tom Holland's life to make him Spider-Man? Because even in that movie, he never acknowledges Uncle Ben. Only
Mhm.
two of them acknowledge Uncle Ben. He doesn't. So
Yeah.
is
And
Uncle Ben not a factor in the MCU? Okay, cool. He's not a factor. Then what makes him Spider-Man then? That's what didn't make sense to me. Is that you're saying that all of you guys have the same fate, but not Tom Holland? But Miles has to have the same fate? That
but
didn't
see,
make
you
sense
know
to
one
me.
thing,
So
to your point, and I thought of this a little. I was a little confused because I thought that's what his uncle was in the first movie. I mean, his uncle got shot, and he's laying there with him. And part of me was kind of like, isn't
mhm.
that his like pivot? Like, because in the movie it is. In the movie, you recall, oh, Spider-Man, uncle died.
Yeah.
Now he
Mhm.
kind of like does the thing. But I'm like, wait, didn't Miles just do that in the first movie? That was one part of me that was
Mhm.
kind of a little like, he did do a version of that. We watched it in the last one.
Yeah.
Why
Mhm.
does he have to have two of them? I
Right.
was kind of a little confused on there, but
Yeah. That's a fair point. To you, Kevin, where were the quote? Was there? I mean, obviously, Alex said that the quote that a lot of people are mentioning, but were there any other quotes that stood out to you?
No, I mean, yes, but like
But that's the best
that's
one. That you got to go with
well,
that
you know,
one.
at first, because that one's been going, and at first, part of it almost seemed a little not cheesy, but like there was a part of it that I was like, would a kid really say that? Until I forgot what was said to him earlier, because he said the whole, what did he say? Like everyone keeps telling me how my story's supposed to go. Nah, I'm gonna do my own thing. And I was like, I work with kids. I don't know if they're gonna be like, everyone keeps telling me how my story is supposed to. And I forgot whenever he was in the counselor's office when she's talking to
Oh
him, they're like,
yeah,
"Oh, here's your story." She's telling him, "Oh, you grew up in an immigrant household and struggled through. That's your story." And I was like, "Oh, that's why it's there. Of this is my story." Because I'm like, I work with a lot of kids. Not many of them frame it that way. So there's a part of me that was like, it's written perfect. I just don't know if a kid would say that. But then once I remember that part of it, I was like, oh no, never mind. It's perfect, perfect. Like it's
oh yeah.
it's great.
The
Like it's
context, the context
all
fit.
yeah, it's an all time just good, and it represents kind of like what I was saying. The whole emphasis on Miles being like, I don't have to accept it the same way. Um, and if I can do something about it, I'm going to. Which ironically is a very Spider-Man thing. In almost
Yeah.
all of the times where Spider-Man's doing stuff, he's always, oh, you can't do this, or you're gonna have to save this
I
and do
got it.
that.
I'm gonna
And
do it.
yeah, like except in this one, it's even to a higher degree. He's almost like more Spider-Man-y than all the other Spider people and animals and reptiles and dinosaurs.
Definitely. And now getting into what did you like the most about the storyline? To me, just how it never loses sight of the true humanity at the center of its story, and even though it would be easy to do so in order to prioritize better animation, it really sticks with that formula of allowing this to be one of the most satisfying Spider-Man stories ever told. To you, Kevin, like what particular element of this storyline did you kind of like the most?
Yeah, I think it's just that idea, like that him being defiant in these spaces that aggressively are saying you don't belong,
Yeah,
like that constant. And they did so good in that storytelling element to where it didn't feel forced or preachy, or it fit exactly with what's going on in the storyline.
yeah.
It wasn't like a, you young black man are not able to, like it wasn't like them saying it in a real weird way.
And it could have
But
went
you
that
also
way. It could have went that way, but they
like
avoided
I yeah,
it.
like well, like kind of like I said earlier, when Miguel was saying it a certain way, I
I
was
was
like,
like,
"Ooh, man, I don't
oh
know. That feels a
man,
little.
it's cringy.
It just feels it doesn't feel right, But yeah, like the whole. I mean, as they're going up and ascending and going up there, and he's more aggressively the way he's telling them like that. And the second time watching, it reinforced what his mom had told him earlier. But she was talking about college or just in general, and she was like, "Hey, when you get in these high places,
Yeah,
like when you get up in these high places, they're gonna try to tell you you don't belong. Don't let them do it." And it's cool, like his groundedness of understanding who he is comes from his mom and his dad, his family, and just being able to understand who he is even in these spaces. And rather than it just pressing him down, he's able to be defiant in that,
yeah,
and yeah, and do his own thing as it says. So
absolutely. To you, Alex, what particular element of this storyline did you kind of like the most?
I have to piggyback of what Kevin said.
Yeah,
Like essentially, Miles is becoming his own person. This like the first one. It was definitively Miles's movie, learning who he is and not allowing um different people to choose his story, from his school counselors to his parents to the people who share the same powers and abilities that he does. He's going to be Spider-Man his way. He's going to be his own man. And that was the definitive thing that kept progressing in this story that I truly love. So for me, um those elements as a whole, keeping that progression, is what was uh my favorite part of watch or my favorite thing about watching this movie. I didn't get bored seeing Miles not stand up for himself. And even I'm like, it's funny because when I look at the first movie, Miles has definitely grown mentally, spiritually, and physically, and definitely emotionally. So like he knows who he is. So for all these different people who are supposed to be close to him to try to trying to make, I guess, to define him for him, and him to come out of that. I thought that was the most healthy way to tell that story, especially sharing something so unique with other people who are predominantly more white, but also who have special, who are different races as well. They share one special thing, and even they were trying to tell him, "You need to do this," and he was like, "Nah, I'll do it my own way." So I think just having that third line throughout the movie is what kept the movie going for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And getting to our next topic 10 years from now, do you still think this will be watchable and intriguing? I definitely think the visuals are something that's just unforgettable, something you can't you can't shy away from. It's always going to stand out when you watch it. The character development from Miles specifically was outstanding, and the extra complimentary actors, characters that added in were just phenomenal. To you, Kevin, like how do you think this will age another decade from now? Because obviously we have that premise of the next movie following it is going to really complete the context. How do you kind of see this aging another decade from now?
Oh, I think it would age very well. I mean, animation done well is always going to age like well, even if it's a classic form, which it'd be hard to see this one ever get to be an old feel. But the fact of yeah, it being groundbreaking, it being um, just incredible and how it does everything. Yeah, I don't see how it couldn't. I could only see it
Just
continuing
going
to
up.
like be watched over and over. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. To you, Alex, like how do you think this particular movie will age another decade from now?
It's going to, I think it's going to age well with the with each generation. Um, I will say we're living, we're, I would say since maybe 2000, what, maybe 15 till now, is what we're living in an age where studios are feeling a little bit more comfortable to tell stories of heroes of color now. And I said this in my spoilers review of this movie yesterday. I said, I bet you in the next 10 years, like Batman's not gonna be like the Batman that we know is not gonna be Batman anymore. We're gonna get, probably gonna get Batman Beyond. There will be no more Peter Parker stories. There'll be Miles Morales stories and other stories. And then we're going to see the transition of characters. Because if you think about it, over the last, ever since cinema and TV have been out, they've been retelling the same stories of these same characters, essentially telling the same stories of Bruce Wayne, Peter Parker, the original X Men, and
And
all.
repeat.
Yeah, like it's been reboot of the same people, but it's never really been past the mantle, except for actually really since Avengers Endgame, where now we're getting a new Captain America. We're getting a new We've got a new Black Panther. We're getting, we're getting a sort of different heroes now, which I think I really what I know this is not part of the MCU, but just to add to my point, what I liked about the Phase 4 is the fact that they were introducing new heroes that we've never seen on screen before. What I dislike about Phase 4, they could have done it a little bit better. Um, but the fact that we're getting like a Shang-Chi, we're getting these different heroes to age well in the next 10 years. Like I want my daughter and her kids to see that there's just more than just one Batman, more than just one Spider-Man, more than just one Hulk. So when I look at Spider-Verse, this is a testament of where it all started and where it could essentially end
Where
up
it
by
could
the
go.
time our kids get older. So yes, I think this will age well. And also it's an animated movie, so it's not, there's not really much swearing in it. There's no really sexual themes in it. So like in a sense, like a 10-year-old can watch this movie and he or she would be fine, you know. And I
Yeah,
think a 10-year-old 10 years from now would probably feel the same way, you know.
definitely.
So
And before we wrap it up, I mean, obviously the question of like where this movie ranks among the best has been discussed. Like in terms of top three or top five, because like I would still have Into the Spider Verse, Spider Man Two, No Way Home, Homecoming, in that kind of mix. Like to you, Kevin, like where would you kind of rank this in particular among like some of your best or favorite Spider Man movies ever?
For me, when I kind of looked at I ranked kind of my top five Spider-Man movies. I put this one, and again, this is only with two watches, and it came out like really recently. Who knows? I might watch it some more, and it like
Rises the
go even
ranks.
higher.
Yeah.
I have it at number four. I have Into the Spider Verse as my number one. That's my favorite Spider-Man ever. Then I have No Way Home, Spider-Man 2, Cross the Spider-Verse, and then the first Spider-Man. The Tobey Maguire, I mean, that was just I mean, that's kind of like
Yeah, I'm always gonna be
it's
biased
always going to
towards
be there. It's going to be,
that.
and I just, again, very much, because again, when I watch the next one, I'm probably going to just be like, these ones, and if it's like that good, I might be like Into the Spider Verse. Number two is 2 and 3 combined for me.
Yeah.
Like it very well could be that, and I'm totally fine with that because, like I said, the first one is one of my favorite superhero movies or just favorite movies in general ever, and it's definitely my favorite Spider-Man Into the Spider Verse. I've watched it an abnormal amount of times, and I love this one, and I can probably watch it probably more than some of the ones I even like, maybe a
If
little
we're
more.
being honest, though, this could go down based on how the next one is. This could go down as the greatest superhero trilogy ever. It's like with how good these two ones. I don't know if we want to have that conversation. With how good these two ones are, the last it could be in
Yeah,
that conversation.
there's no misses, and almost all of them have one. Like one, like the best trilogies might have like one that's okay.
Yeah,
Neither of these are okay. They're
they're
great.
great.
They're both like great movies.
Yeah, absolutely. To you, Alex, to close it out, like where would this be in kind of your top five or top three rankings ever? Obviously, I think you
So,
have it number one.
oh yeah, definitely. And the reason why I would say just follow me real quick. The Crossified Spider Verse is number one for me, is because this movie did two things. It got us invested in the character, and it even got us so invested to the character that people are so eager to buy tickets for Beyond the Spider Verse, and they're asking when the trailer is. Like today, and I did not know this today until I got home. They finally announced the release date for Marvel Spider-Man 2 for
Oh
October
yeah,
16th, and
Mm-hmm.
people thought that that was for
Oh,
the next
yeah,
movie.
they were that amped.
They were that amped, and I'm saying I have yet to, aside from Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame, I do not remember a comic book movie leaving people that hype.
hmm.
Like, because I can't wait. Like, think about it. We're about to end this year. Watch it end this year with a great Spider-Man movie and probably an even better Spider-Man game. And then we're about to go into the next year with another Spider-Man movie wrapping up essentially Miles' story from what I'm reading. This is probably the last animated movie in the franchise. So that's why it sits number one for me, not just because of the story, but what it was also able to do. So it's Across the Spider-Verse for me. No Way Home is second. Uh Into the Spider-Verse is three. Raimi Spider-Man 2, and then yeah, it's a tie
Don't do the
between.
Andrew Garfield movies. Don't bring it
No,
back. Don't do
it's
don't do
actually a
that.
tie between Far From Home and Spider-Man 1.
Okay. Yeah, Spider-Man
I
One
really like
still
Far
holds
From
up.
Home.
Spider-Man One still holds up.
Yeah, so I probably, you know what I'd probably do. Yeah, I would do Spider-Man 2 and then Spider-Man 1, because though the first two movies of the Raimi trilogy were really good.
Yes, absolutely.
So,
Well, Kevin and Alex, it's been an absolute pleasure having you guys on, and thanks so much for doing this.
For sure.
oh,
Thanks for
anytime,
having me.
man. Thank you for having me
And we're
on.
gonna be ready for the next one. We're gonna be ready for the next Beyond because it might be 100% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Who knows?
Yeah.
Well, that wraps it up for tonight. I'm your host, Wenzel Burns. This has been Full Scope. See you later.